As 2020 coming to a close here, corporations around the world are looking ahead to what might come next year. And with the COVID pandemic still out of control, there are many challenges ahead. Among the questions CEOs will need to answer: should employees be required to take the vaccine before returning to work? According to a recent poll by the Yale Chief Executive Leadership Institute, about 150 CEOs of America's largest companies, 71% said they believe the vaccine should be required at work. And joining us right now to discuss this and so much more is Dan Glazer. He's, of course, the CEO of Marsh & McLennan, a professional services firm with 76,000 employees globally and clients in 130 countries. Dan, good morning to you. Appreciate seeing you. Merry Christmas.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Let's talk about 2021, because there's going to be some huge challenges and big questions, thorny questions that companies are going to be confronted with as we try to get employees back to work. And let's start with the one that I just mentioned at the top, which is how companies should engage and perhaps maybe even require employees to take this vaccine. What are you advising companies?
Sure. And we're hearing this a lot. First, we need vaccines to be abundant and widely available. And that's still a ways off, particularly when you think on a global basis. Generally, any mandate should be actually government action as opposed to individual companies. If we leave it up to companies, there'll be tremendous variability, and that defeats the whole purpose of wide vaccinations. Now, don't get me wrong. CEOs want their employees to be vaccinated, but I think that mandates are going to be very rare. We all want to return to a more normal way of life. I mean, I certainly do. I know you do. And vaccines are really required for that. I mean, I know herd immunity. People hear herd immunity, and it sounds awful, but it's really required. There's three ways to get to herd immunity: natural immunity, the terrible case counts of infection, which is the hard way, and vaccinations. And so that combination is what's needed to get to like a 40 to 70% immunity threshold in order to beat this pandemic. And so vaccines are an absolute requirement. And so we are advising companies to strongly encourage their employees to get vaccinated. I've reminded people a couple of times about John McCain. If you recall, after 9/11, he wrote a book, Why Courage Matters. And in it, he acknowledged the uncertainty and the fear that existed. And then he said, now get on the damn elevator, fly on the damn plane. And so what I would say to paraphrase is go ahead.
But Dan, doesn't that reflect courage matters, leadership matters, and to the extent that there's a conversation about whether it's voluntary or not? And look, there's no decision that has to be made by most major companies probably for the next 2 to 3 months, given, as you said, that the vaccine will not be at scale. But 2 to 3 months out from now, there are going to be hard decisions that companies are going to have to make. And while, yes, you would want this to all be voluntary, and maybe we can get there because there's such a demand for this. If there isn't, don't you think when you consider business today and all of the efforts around being socially responsible, isn't this the ultimate version of social responsibility to effectively mandate these things if, in fact, we get to a point where not enough Americans are getting vaccinated?
Companies and modern leadership just generally don't tell people what to do. We educate, we cajole, we support, but I just don't see that in
Dan, I apologize for interrupting, but there are businesses today that do not allow employees to come to work without being tested. Do you believe that's some kind of invasion of the rights of these employees?
No, listen,
and what right does an employee have to come? What right does an employee have to come to work and effectively potentially give COVID to another employee because they don't want to get vaccinated? Under what scenario does the liability protection, which doesn't exist, allow for that?
Yeah, I don't actually think that this is a liability-driven issue. Of course, it's one of the concerns that people have, but You've even heard hospital systems and transportation companies really struggling with the notion of mandating vaccination. So there's nothing that you would like to see more, or I would like to see more, than wide-scale vaccination, because frankly, that's the only way we get back to a more normal pace of life. I'm just telling you the reality that I do not believe from the companies we are talking to that there is an appetite for mandates for vaccinations.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.